Call this meeting of the Pittsburg City Commission to order. Will you join me in the flag salute?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we will now open the meeting for any public input. If there's anybody here wishing to speak to the commission about anything, would you come forward, state your name, where you live, and
Good evening.
evening.
My name is PJ Graham, and I'm a resident of Pittsburgh for 13 years. I've come tonight simply because I have some concern about the homeless people at the Wesley House that will have to evacuate by August 1st. I'm here just on my own. I do have a lot of friends and other people from the area that have the same concern that I do, that if they aren't allowed to stay there until they can find permanent homing, that it will be difficult for them, less safe for them, less healthier for them, and where are they going to go? I'm just here because so often city councils only hear complaints. You don't hear that people are proud that their community is trying to help the people who need a hand up. So I'm just here to represent those people who haven't come forward, because so often we're silent when we're happy about a situation. When I saw what was happening at the Wesley House, I was proud that this community was supporting them. And I would just like to encourage you to reconsider the August 1st deadline if that's possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Mayo, and I live here in Pittsburgh too. Been here for 20 years. And to add on to what she talked about, I also wanted to address the homeless issue. Again, I think August 1st is, like next Monday. And it's an awful short time period for some of these folks to find permanent housing. As you know, it's very difficult in this area to find that affordable housing. And some of those folks that are living there are not unemployed. They're employed people that have no homes because they can't afford the rents. They can't afford to live like you and I do. And so the community for Wesley House to allow that tent community, so to speak, to exist there for short term, because it was never intended to be a long-term solution, and they are working with these people to help them and address that. But it takes time. It can't be cured overnight. So I think to reconsider the August 1st deadline would be helpful for them, so that they can try to find a suitable place for those people to go. Otherwise, it kind of impresses me as the people who complain are the ones who say, well, if I don't have to look at it, then it doesn't exist. I don't even have to think about the homeless, but it does exist. Obviously, it exists in our community, and it can exist in our, right next door to us. We don't know. I had neighbors who lived in a house with no electricity and no water because they couldn't afford it. But yet they were in a home, they had a roof over their head, but they weren't living like they should have been living. But I knew that because they came and asked for help, but most people wouldn't necessarily know that. So it's not necessarily out of sight, out of mind. It's here, it's present, and we need to address it. Thank you.
Thank you. Nobody else? Okay. Just so you know, I don't know how you guys know how the public input works. You give us your input. We don't actually take any action on this evening. There's no actionable item for us to even discuss on this. So we do thank you for your input, and you're not alone in that. We understand there's a problem, and we are working to deal with it. So thank you again. So if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and close the public input. Move on to the consent agenda. Is there any items to be removed this evening?
Item C.
D? Motion?
Other questions or comments? I'll move to approve with the exception of item C.
A second.
The movement and seconded to approve the consent agenda except for item C. Roll call vote.
Bray,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Ketterman,
Aye.
Mansell,
Aye.
Mernan.
Aye.
And I've been remiss, just let everybody know Commissioner Mernan is joining us by phone this evening. She is out of town on business, so. Chuck, what was your question?
Well, I don't have any questions on that, John. I just have a few calls, people would want to know about the trail not being in there, so just explain the schedule so people watching it, and they might understand what this is all about.
Sure, appreciate the opportunity. I think Cameron's here. Basically, what we've decided as a city, the trail, I think, was scheduled to go in this fall. We had an opportunity to partner with KDOT, and we could either do the trail this fall and then do the road widening next spring, which would have been, I don't even want to guess how many months of inconvenience that would have been to the public. But we got Cameron hired on, and so to indoctrinate him, we told him to figure out what was the best thing to do. And I think he came up with a pretty good solution. He's working with KDOT, and if you can quickly run through some timelines and maybe let some people know.
What the proposal is before you now is not to exclude the trail. It's actually combine the trail with the road project. The original KDOT agreement that we did enter into previously addressed only the trail. So this allows them to bid the non-participating in the road project at the same time that we do the trail project. So the trail project is going forward, be done in conjunction with the road widening. And as Darren alluded to, not only will we reduce the amount of time that the residents there are inconvenienced with construction, it also will greatly reduce our overall costs, because with the funding that we receive for the trail, federal dollars, we would not be able to close that trail without giving a suitable detour. And since that trail would be the only route in many of the places there, we'd have to build redundant facilities or temporary facilities while we did the construction of the roadway in places where it was impacted. And that cost was, I think, estimated anywhere between $120,000 to $200,000 just to provide that. So it made great sense for us to roll the two projects together. And so, again, what's before you is just expanding the scope of the agreement that we had with KDOT to include both the road, which will be non-participating by KDOT, and the trail project. None of the dollars contributed by KDOT change whatsoever. It's still going to be $660,000 max on their side.
All right, thank you very much.
I do have one question here, and this is probably just that I don't understand, but since Mike King is no longer there, when his name are on these documents, do we need new documents of any kind to?
No. I'm saying no, but I guess I should defer that.
These were the documents that were sent to us. I'll follow up with KDOT to make sure that they don't need to change that signature.
Okay, I was just curious about that, whether
That's a
that
good question.
Yeah.
would that would cause a problem or not.
Can you touch real quickly on the schedule? Just, I know it's a little early, but
Schedule-wise, right now, we're going through the preliminary plan review. We'll have a field check set. Basically, that's where KDOT can go out and actually look in the field with the proposed plans, take a look at that. We expect to have that done here by about middle August, which is a couple months ahead of their schedule. What we're looking at trying to schedule this is to have KDOT a biddable set of plans here by the end of the year, get on their schedule to bid early next year so that we can start turning dirt as soon as possible next year. So right now our goal is to try and get this done in one construction season if at all possible. And I know that construction phasing and access is going to be a huge emphasis as we go through the plan review process.
Is that going to be done in, I guess, sections, so it won't be entirely closed to doctor's offices and whatever?
Correct. There'll be access maintained to everyone throughout there. I say some of the neighborhoods that have two streets, we may look at having to go through only one entrance to that neighborhood during that time. Other areas where you have a single street or single point of access, there'll be either an intersection be done half at a time so that you'll be able to maintain access through it out, or provide some sort of alternative access. You know, if it's a small office that might be able to park in another location for a brief period of time just to minimize the amount of impact that they have. But again, that's one of the things that we'll be working through the process on.
All right, thank you. No further questions. I move to approve item C.
Second.
Been moved and second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, Cameron.
Thanks, Cameron.
Good job, Cameron.
Consider the following: 2017 budget. Consider the 2017 city budget for adoption. The public hearing is scheduled for August 9th, 2016, as prescribed by law, to be held in the City Commission Room located in the Law Enforcement Center at 201 North Pine at 5:30 p.m. for the purpose of hearing and answering questions related to the 2017 budget. Jamie?
Last meeting, we presented the city manager's submitted budget for 2017 to the city commission, and we said we'd be back for this meeting to hear your input and recommendation on that. If you look up on the screen here, the highlight in yellow is tonight's date. Whatever you guys decide to go with tonight, I've got to publish, work up a little worksheet that's required by the state of Kansas and have it published in a newspaper, like probably Thursday or Friday is the latest, for a public hearing on the 2017 budget. Then on August 9th, we'll open up a public hearing for the budget at that time, and then whatever you guys decide, it has to be finalized on the 9th, and then I've got to prepare the big state document, excuse me, send it to the county clerk to be certified with the state of Kansas. You have any questions on the logistics of any of that, or?
I don't have any questions on logistics. I've got a few, but this is the time when you want me to do it. Go ahead, I've got some comments.
Yeah, I think that's all we really had prepared from the staff. I think we made all of our points. At least a month ago, we talked about the 5-year forecast. 4 months ago, we started the discussion on the budget. We hope it's been clear, and we are happy to answer as many of your questions, or if not all your questions this evening, with the idea that you could finalize the budget and come to some agreement so Jamie can get on with the calendar part of this, which is the state requirements on how we publish it. And you'll take a fine. I don't think it's actually legally adopted until August 9th, but the idea is we can't do any of that if we don't finalize it this evening with you. So with that, I think just about everybody's here, and we're happy to take as many questions as we can.
Well, I have a few comments. I've written down some notes because I wanted to walk through a few things, and hopefully citizens in the room and people watching at home will be patient with me as I walk through a few things. But I can say for myself, and I'm sure for the other 4 commissioners that are either here in the room or on the phone, this is a decision that has weighed heavily on me as an elected official, and it does every year because we're managing a $48 million budget. And I don't think a lot of our citizens truly understand that and understand the magnitude of what the city does and how much it affects their lives and how much this decision that we're making tonight affects their lives each and every year. So I've got a few comments, and I first would like to thank, I did receive feedback from multiple citizens who took the time to reach out to me and express their opinion, one way or the other, some in favor, some against the proposed budget that was presented by city staff. And I appreciate each and every one of the people that did that, because many times we make these tough decisions and we don't hear a peep from citizens until the decision's made, and then all we hear is the complaint. These citizens took the time to express their feedback, and I know some of the other commissioners received those calls as well. Everyone was very respectful. Everyone was, their thoughts were well thought out, and I do very much appreciate that. I want to run through, first and foremost, one of the things that I heard on multiple calls that I had was this misconception that the city raises property taxes every year. And, I've been a commissioner since 2011, and I know within that time period there's been 1 mill increase, and that was back on the 2015 budget. which was 2.9 mils at that time. And there had been no other mill increase while I was a city commissioner, so I asked our city folks to just provide me some data going all the way back to 2000. And outside of the budget that was approved by this commission for the 2015 budget, there's only been 2 other mill increases since the year 2000 for the city of Pittsburgh. There was a 1.7 in 2003 and a 1.8 in 2007. So that means from the moment of the recession that hit, we've only increased property taxes once for the city of Pittsburgh. So any other property taxes that have been increased have been by some other entity that is not associated with the city of Pittsburgh. And I can say for my part, there's been, since I've been city commissioner, there's been a concerted effort to not increase property taxes because we understand the magnitude of the dollar amounts that other people pay and what that means on their personal lives and their budgets. Just from 2010 to the present time, if you just look at health insurance, property insurance, workers' compensation insurance, electricity, and pension for our workers, we've seen 13 mils worth of increases in those expenses alone within that time period. So in the last 6 years, that's 13 mils of increase just for those 5 or 6 items. And within that same time period, because of our concerted effort to not saddle citizens with additional property taxes, we've seen a decrease in our reserves of almost 9 mils. And if I'm stating something that sounds way off, Jamie, because you're more an expert at the budget than I am, so I don't want to mislead people if I'm giving them wrong information. So just those 2 things alone are very telling about what we've seen as an increase and what we've done to try to minimize the effect of that on our citizens year in and year out. This next budget that's been proposed by Jamie and the city staff shows an increase of almost $1 million just for electricity. So just between electricity and streetlights, there'll be a $115,000 increase just for this budget, one item. That money has to come from someplace. And that is why our city staff has proposed a budget that is proposed a $5 million increases, because some of these expenses over the course of the last decade have continued to increase each and every year, some based on third-party increases in services, some based on unfunded mandates from Topeka, like pension costs, for example. There is a need for us as a city to look at building our reserves back up. We have to do that some way. If we were to have a significant issue, significant catastrophic event, we need to be able to have sufficient reserves to address that. And unfortunately, going forward, based on a new property tax lid that will be put in place next year, this governing entity, who is the government that you have elected and which is most closest to the people, has had one of those remedies or available options taken away or significantly reduced, let me put it that way. After that property tax lid is put into place, the most we will be able to increase our property tax mill levy on an annual basis will be approximately 0.7 mils per budget. And that's based off of the historical average of what the CPI would be, right, Jamie?
The Consumer Price Index for urban CPIU.
So when you look at that historically and how it's factored into what how the laws read, that's what historically it's been averaging for us, is about 0.7 of a mil. So, and that's capped at the CPI. So that means what they consider our costs to be increasing on an annual basis, we're basically capped at only being able to reduce that property tax at that amount. And as you can see from our historical our practice is not to increase the property tax on an annual basis even if we can. We've historically, at least in the last decade and 15 years, tried not to do that. The concern that we have, and the concern the staff has, is that because of our concerted effort to not raise property taxes, and we've dipped over the last decade into some reserves. And we can't continue that practice as a city. We have to make sure that we're protected and that we're providing the citizens with the protection they need if a catastrophic event were to occur. That's why the 5 mil increase has been proposed. Not for any other reason other than we want to try to address that situation with the remedies that are at our disposal. And after this next year, some of those remedies are significantly reduced, and we want to make sure that we're in a position where we can address that at some point. Is that a fair statement from city staff's point of view?
I believe so.
Okay. Now, I've thought a lot about this, and like I said, I'm probably talking everybody's ear off here with some thoughts, but I thought that some of that background was necessary because it helped me understand the current scenario, the current situation we're in, and it helped me get to a point where I felt like I could make a decision that I could recommend them back. Back in 2015, I did not vote for the property tax increase. And that was a difficult decision for me in a way because I was the only person that did not approve the budget. And that's not a position I would like to be in, to not approve a budget because of a property tax increase. And I'm not in favor of taxes. Taxes saddle our citizens with costs that some of them aren't prepared to be able to make. Some people are on limited income. Some people have their limited income reduced on an annual basis, and they just can't afford significant cost. And we can't look at property taxes or any tax in a box and just say this tax only equates to 50 or 60 bucks for any property owner that has a $100,000 home. Well, if we look at it that way, it just sounds, oh, it's just 50 or 60 bucks, but it's 50 or 60 bucks more than the taxes that they already pay. So you've got to look at it collectively in the aggregate, and that's the way I try to look at these things. My position this evening, and it's been difficult for me to come to this, and this is at least where I would like to start the discussion by the group, is I cannot support a 5 mil increase. I talked with the city staff. I've met with Jamie and Darren. I've asked them multiple questions. Part of the reason I have some of this information is because I've talked to them extensively about these issues. They've given me charts. They've given me information to try to come to this decision. But I also understand basic math. And I understand that we can't do nothing. And if our citizens are going to want to maintain the same level of services that they have today, something will have to give at some point. It's not going to be doable. The city has focused significant efforts on being more efficient, changing health plans, saving hundreds of thousands of dollars in health plan savings. It's just one example of things that the city has done to minimize that effect on our citizens. We've not hired people when people retired. We've reduced staff in certain departments. We've reduced training budgets. We've done thing after thing after thing to try to reduce expenses over the years, and that's what's been able to allow us to not raise property taxes on an annual basis. So that discussion led me to, I can't approve a 5, but I can't, in good conscience, say no to anything because I understand that we need to do something. We need to be able to pay debt. We need to be able to build our reserves. Even if it's not very much, we need to start that trend back up on our reserves. So what I'm proposing, for at least for initial discussion, is I'm proposing a 3 mil increase for this year. But what I'm also proposing as comments relative to that is I know that we've budgeted conservatively on what we think the casino will bring in from a revenue standpoint going forward because in part we don't know. it's very, subjective at this point as to what we think that will bring. And we also have a public safety sales tax for this building and Fire Station 1, which will actually be paid off a year early next year. And so what I would like to do, I'm proposing a 3 mil increase this year, but what I would like to task city staff with, and us as a commission over the next year, is finding a way to make up for shortfalls in other ways, whether that's by finding a creative solution to renew that sales tax going forward and allowing it to be used in part for building reserves and other things that we need. And if we can accomplish that over this next year, then my proposal next year at this same time when we're reviewing this budget would be to decrease the mill levy and take these 3 mills back off. I feel strongly about that, and I wanted to be on the record as saying that. And if we can find a creative solution to be able to do what I'm just talking about, I will be voting to decrease the 3 mills next year. That's at least my proposal. The other commissioners can tell me if I'm way off base.
I'll go next. First, I'd like to thank city staff and everybody that worked on this. There was a lot of time and effort, and we really appreciate the job you did this year in explaining it and getting us to where we're at this evening. Great job, guys.
Thanks, Mayor.
I probably couldn't agree with Michael any more in any of the statements that he made tonight. I too cannot support a 5 mil increase, but I also believe that we have to do something. We can't continue to let the reserves draw down to the point that they're at today. So I would also, I'll be short and sweet, but I would also support a 3 mil increase, but nothing more with the intent of, if we're able to get that sales tax back on, I also would vote to remove those next year. So that's about all I got to say.
Jeremy, would you like to go next, or Monica? I could go now, or let you guys go.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Well, here's my spiel. This year, last year, staff recommended 2 mil increase in the property tax. But we also had a street sales tax that was coming up for renewal. And we thought if we increased the mill levy by 2 mills, we might not get the streets renewed sales tax. So the decision was made not to raise the mill levy, and the street sales tax passed. And thank God it did, because that's very good for the city. As Michael said, the state changed the way we can raise property tax now. Nothing we did, they did that at the state. The staff is recommending a 5 mil increase this year. And I know I don't have any control what the county does, but the county's in the same boat we are. If we raise 5 mils as a city, I don't know what the county's going to raise, but I got to look, as a city, we also need to support our schools. And I don't know what the school's going to do. Maybe they're going to go for a vote in November. But I think a 5 mil increase by the city and whatever the county raises probably going to hurt the school when it comes to a vote. Probably been a couple weeks ago, I can't remember, Dr. Davison from the college presented a housing statistic study. And one thing I found interesting in his study, he pointed out that 34.6% of the people that work in Pittsburgh live in Pittsburgh. So the mill levy increase would be on them 34.6% of the citizens. But also, there are citizens that live in Pittsburgh that live on a fixed income. And I've talked to them, like Michael said, we've all talked to citizens, and I was surprised at the number of calls we got, because this is it's an important thing that citizens came and called us. One particular individual talked about Social Security. They didn't get an increase last year, and they think they might get a $2.50 increase this year, but their Medicaid's going up $26. You know, we had a housing market study done in 2014, In 2014, the median income in the city was $33,096. The submitted budget for fiscal year 2017, median income is $31,786. That's a decrease in median income for families in town of $1,310. I understand the costs we have, but I also understand the costs the citizens have. And a $5 million increase is going to be on these people that work here, 34.6%. It's going to be increased on people on fixed income. It's going to be increased on property owners and business owners. One thing that really touched me is business owners that called me, and maybe they don't live in town, but they own a business they're paying property tax on. And a lot of them told me that the $5 million will be something they can afford. Their concerns was the $5 million on their employees and what they have to deal with. So I agree with John and Michael, and my recommendation would, our employees, they do a good job, and we get all kind of compliments on what they do. We only budget a 2% raise increase every other year. And this is a year that we have budgeted for city employees to get a raise. I would recommend a $2 million increase for those raises and a $1 million increase for our debt. And since we don't budget raises every year, I would suggest that $2 million falls off in 2018, or we take it off because it's not needed for raises. I would go along with John and Michael. If there's some way we can take $3 million off, I would be for that also. Like Michael said, the casino, once it gets up and running, we're going to receive revenues from the casino that can go towards a lot of our costs and needs and our reserves. I understand the casino's not a fix-all to our problems, but it's a start, and we still need to look for ways to cut our costs. So I agree with Michael and John. I think a $3 million, although it might be a hardship I know it will be for some people, I think we have to do something, and I would agree to a $3 million increase.
Monica, you want to go ahead?
Monica?
Monica,
Go ahead, Jeremy.
you sure? Okay. Well, first of all, as everyone else has kind of pointed out, I wanted to thank the city staff and Jamie and his staff in particular for putting as much time and effort into this budget, this product that we have in front of us. I'd said it at the last meeting as well, but it bears repeating. I think that our job as commissioners, or mine anyway, is made considerably easier by the effort, like the clear amount of time and effort put into things like the budget, that when it comes to hard decisions, they're made significantly easier because of the work put in by the people who work for the city. You guys do an outstanding job, and it's awesome working with you. I want to make that very clear up front. Michael, I wanted to thank you for your nice historical context. I always appreciate something like that, and I think being able to make decisions, especially of the magnitude of $50 million, bears keeping those kinds of things in mind. I'm very much in favor of that. And I think that, as you pointed out, very clearly in the past, the city has made considerable attempts to not raise property taxes, that it's only happened a couple of times over the past decade and a half, which is, by all counts, pretty impressive. So when something like this comes up of 5 mills, I mean, lots of people are surprised and shocked, and oh my God, how are we going to afford that kind of thing? Honestly, I got phone calls as well, expressing concern about the amount that the property tax would be going up. But in all honesty, I've probably heard just as many from people who understand why that 5 mills, those 5 mills are on there. That it's like, yeah, it's a lot of money. It's nothing to balk at, but at the same time, there's a very clear reason, again, with all of the effort put in by the staff at the city for that. It's not some number that they pulled out of nowhere and said, well, we're going to do this and we'll see how it goes, kind of thing. Like, I know, I've seen and talked to Jamie and the finance staff and Darren and everyone at the city. Like, they're thinking these things through very thoroughly, very, very, very thoroughly, like more than most citizens, I think, understand, like more than I understand at times. And so when they come to me, again, with a budget that is as well thought out and just thorough and explanatory as this one, I mean, while the number is hard to swallow, I think at the same time there are very clear reasons for doing this, that we want to not just think about how are things now, what does Pittsburgh look like at this very moment, but what are we trying to move toward? What is it that Pittsburgh is shooting for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years down the line, and what do we need to do in order to get there? And I think that decisions like this are key in getting us there. And simply saying, well, this is uncomfortable, and then shirking it off and not doing anything is incredibly irresponsible and will end badly in the long run. So all of the things that are involved in the increase, the employee raises, the expanding the street resurfacing program, the addressing the water lines, the lead water lines, which in my mind is a huge thing in and of itself, that bears addressing. All of those things and all of the other things that the budget does are incredibly important. And I don't think I could settle for not doing what and I think the city staff believe are the right thing in passing the budget as it is proposed. And that's where I stand. Monica, your turn.
Jeremy, I want to clarify, you're saying 5?
Yes. Yeah, I'm willing to pass 5 as it is.
Okay. So thanks everybody for your summaries of that, and I would have to say, I agree. Just from my perspective, I received 3 phone calls that were thinking that the number was too high. I received other comments about, the old adage of, I want my taxes to stay to go down, but I want the same amount of service. And so that's something that I've considered. Again, the accuracy, completeness, and transparency of the budget proposal is significant. I worry about the same things that Jeremy just listed. I think it's a comprehensive package of what we've done, but I also truly believe that there'll be revenues from the casino, that while we're being very conservative about it, which is a good idea, I think that will help. Just as a clarification from John and Michael and Chuck, I just want to clarify, we are talking about this year's budget tonight, and we're voting on this. And did I hear you guys correctly? You're just saying, as a point of reference for the future, you would want to look at removing for just the reasons that I explained?
Yeah, this is Michael. That's what I've proposed, is that we, in this 2017 budget, that we look at the 3 mills, but that we keep a list of items that we need to work through over the coming months to try to solve, and have a concerted effort to do that as a commission and city staff. And if we can resolve those and come up with additional revenues and additional efficiencies that we can drive out, that I would propose to have those eliminated.
I think part of that also, Monica, was that if we're able to renew that sales tax and split that up into the 3 categories that were proposed for next year, that would give us the opportunity to remove those mills from the property tax also.
Okay, I understand. But that isn't any action we can take tonight.
No,
That's
no.
that's just a hope for the future. Okay,
That's a hope
all
for
right,
the
thanks.
future,
And
yeah.
I apologize for just making sure I'm hearing you correctly from afar here. So the things that are listed in the budget, I truly believe there's no fluff there. There is no nothing in there that isn't important and that somebody wouldn't think is an important thing. I do believe that we have to look at this responsibly. The debt is quite problematic in my opinion. We need to get to a more responsible place there. And so I'm open for discussion as far as the number, and I think that we can come to some kind of consensus here.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else to say?
Well, I won't be able to support anything over 3. So with that being said, I'd be willing to move to approve the budget with a 3 mil increase. Understanding that, Monica, you're exactly right. I can't act on the other things that I've mentioned tonight as potential solutions for the future, but I thought it was important for me to have those on the record this evening. So I'd be willing to move to approve the budget with a 3 mil increase, as I mentioned earlier. But if that doesn't pass, then I'm not willing to agree to anything over that.
Well, I agree with you, Michael, on the 3 mil. I think that's something we need to do. I think that's something that the citizens can afford. So I would support a 3 mil, and I second your motion to a 3 mil increase in this year's budget, not for 2017.
Clarification, do we need to articulate where those no votes were?
Well, I said 2 mils for employee raises since we budget them every other year, and this is the year we budget for employee raises, and I said a mil for paying off debt. So that's where my 3 mils goes.
Darren and Jamie?
Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, but the
Yeah,
3
yeah,
mil
right.
will still allow us to give the employees a raise, cover the debt, and still be able to put some into the reserves, correct?
That's correct. Approximately 2 mils was for the general fund, and 1 mil was for debt service. And then the library had a 1/4 mil that their board approved too, so it would actually be a 3.25 mil rate.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. If it was 3 mils, if that's the motion you're making, then it would be 2 for operating. We would obviously give raises with that since that's being approved in the budget. The rest of it would go to reserves, and the 1 mil would go to debt service. So
Yeah,
that's the clear motion you probably need to make, though. I think would be helpful.
That's my motion.
The 2 mils for the general fund would generate about $238,000 in reserves for the general fund, so.
You want to,
Yeah, you want me to restate it?
yeah, restate your.
I'll restate the motion. I'll move to approve the budget with a 3 mil increase, one of those being applied to debt service and the other 2 being applied to general fund.
Gotcha.
I second your motion, Michael.
Any other discussion? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you for all the time you all put into making these decisions.
Well, as Jeremy said, without all the charts and the information and the book that you guys put together, it would be a much more complicated process than what it already is. So we very much appreciate your work.
Again, thanks, staff. It's a lot easier process today to go through these than.
And you said, Jamie, earlier that our next commission meeting will be for
August
the-
9th?
August 9th for a public hearing?
Yes,
On this matter.
I'll put a legal publication in the newspaper that it shows what you guys recommended tonight for the year 2017. It shows the last 2 years as well. It's a state form you got to use.
So I would recommend the public that called us, if they feel like they want to come to the meeting, they should. You know, sometimes people don't like to get up in front of people, but, you know, your voice should be heard. So recommend coming August 9th.
Well, I think the last thing, we don't have any department reports. I think it's important to note, maybe to wrap it up, everybody said thank you to everybody, and, you know, obviously those are heartfelt congratulations for finishing this process. I know it's 4 months. It's probably, hopefully it's what you know you're going to do when you sign on to be a commissioner. Sometimes it's unclear exactly what that job entails. But no matter what you're doing, you should know that it means you're going to be passing or voting on a budget every year. I think the general statement would be Pittsburgh's in a pretty good place. It's nice to have the option in this community to discuss a 5 mil increase. I know there's a lot of communities that it's not an option. If they're going to sustain any kind of growth or even maintain where they are, they're looking at double and triple that sometimes. So we are very lucky to have the opportunity to have these discussions, and they are discussions, and I hope you feel like they've been discussions. I know we have for the last 4 months. I haven't seen anybody pounding a table or demanding this and that, and I think that leads us to a place where the citizens can have faith that good government's going to take place, and I think we need to reiterate the importance of home rule, the importance of an election which creates 5 positions for people that are in touch with the community and are willing to sit down and take the time as their lives allow them to and make these decisions on behalf of 20,000 people. So you really deserve all the credit. We're getting paid to do it. You're not. So thanks to you. We'll do it again next year. And like Chuck said, if you have any more issues with it before it's over, show up at the public hearing. And thanks for your time.
Were there no non-agenda reports or requests this evening?
There is not.
All righty. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.